a faith without clergy or monastics. And today's guest speaker is Patricia Haynie. Speaking on the Baha'i faith, Patricia grew up in the Baha'i community and has served in a variety of areas, including child and adult education. She is a member of local spiritual assemblies and has been a delegate to the Baha'i National Convention. She is a retired dental hygienist who continues her profession as a volunteer in the free dental clinic at St. Luke's. She and her husband moved from South Florida to enjoy retirement closer to family, including their 2 grandsons. Patricia, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Brian. Special thanks to Russ for setting this up and making me feel so welcome this morning. It's been a big help. Thank you. So, imagine some of you are not very familiar with the Baha'i community. We are the youngest of the world's independent world religions. It's only about 6.5 million of us around the world. Even though our numbers are relatively small, we're very widespread. It would be hard to go to a place in the world where you're not going to find some Baha'is. In fact, we were attending a Baha'i conference, an international conference several years ago, and they invited people up on the stage to represent different places, different localities where you would find Baha'i assemblies. There were well over 200 people on the stage, but here's the best part. They were all dressed in their native costumes. It was magnificent. And to look at that and to feel that that is your family, I still get emotional. But that's not just my Baha'i family, that's all of us. We're all part of that human family. And it's like a beautiful garden filled with all different kinds of flowers. So the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith is Baha'u'llah. The name means the glory of God. And he was Persian by birth, born in Tehran. Of course, that is now Iran, but at that time it was Persia. And as a young man, he was born into a very wealthy and noble, well-respected family. His father was a minister to the Shah. But Baha'u'llah was not interested in going into the family business. Excuse me, we are not public speakers in our household. So he did not go into what was expected of him, and instead he devoted his early years to caring for the poor and the ill in his community. But in time, he announced that he had been called to a higher purpose. He declared that he was a new messenger from God, and that he brought a message of unity and peace that would take time to be fulfilled in the world. But in time, this was a promise that has been extended in all the world religions, that there would come a time of great peace. So we believe that that time will come in the future. So one of the questions, well, let me backtrack. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet quite a bit here. Baha'u'llah, because his message was so powerful, this message of love, peace, unity, and so many people responded to it, he was a threat to the government, to the clergy, and as a result, he was imprisoned, tortured, exiled from place to place, starting in Tehran, going through successive places, ending up in the prison city of Akka, which was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire at that time. All of his wealth was removed from him, his properties were destroyed. In spite of everything, he has left an incredible amount of written word, both as simple as a prayer or maybe the size of a volume. Most of you are still familiar with encyclopedias. If I talk to a younger group, they kind of go, what's an encyclopedia? But you know how large an encyclopedia volume is? Well, Baha'u'llah's writings would fill up about 8 or 9 of those. That's the volume of writings that we have. So because he ended up in Israel, what is now modern day Israel, that's where our World Center is. So we have assemblies at the local level, but we also have we have local spiritual assemblies, but we also have an international group. These are 9 individuals that are elected through a process that is so unique that NPR actually did a story on it several years ago. We do it without politicking, without nomination, and it's a remarkable process that we end up with people who are really qualified to serve the community. So one of the questions that was asked of me a few minutes ago was about our houses of worship. If we're at the local level, we're more like an extended family, and we meet in each other's homes. Larger communities will have a center that they utilize, but internationally, we are known for our houses of worship. So you will find them, and we have one in this country, this right outside of Chicago in Wilmette, and you've probably seen photographs of it. And so they are in different places around the world. What they have in common is that the building is round. And they flashed a picture of the ceiling of the one in Wilmette when one of yeah. And it was like, oh, I've seen that, I know that. But each of these buildings, what they have in common is that they have 9 sides. The number 9 is significant for the Baha'i community because it's the largest complete number. It symbolizes fulfillment. And so there are 9 doors, which means no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, where you come from, there's a door for you. And you are welcome. We don't have formal services. In fact, there's no ritual. And you figured out there's no clergy in the Baha'i community. So I'm simply here as a member of the faith. So these houses of worship are surrounded by beautiful gardens. The idea is that you go through the garden and you prepare yourself to have your own personal spiritual experience. Once a day they may have readings that are from various world religions. There's also a facility on the grounds that would have an auditorium that would have other opportunities for people to communicate and get involved with things. But the main sanctuary is on a very personal level. It's just so we can communicate with our hearts and our Creator. So I want to pause a minute and talk about spiritual vocabulary. We struggle with words to describe spiritual concepts. How do you even define love? Well, and we know what it is intellectually, but how it makes us feel, we find ourselves at a loss for words. So you're going to find vocabulary that I'm going to use. I'm going to try to pause at those moments and explain it a little bit. But vocabulary is going to be different from religion to religion, right? Even in our own families, don't we have vocabulary that we use that other families don't necessarily use? Usually they're influenced by the youngest people in the family, right? So when I speak about God, and I use different words that may not be something that you have used, but it's common to us in our scripture, I have to be aware that that may not be something that you're aware of or you're familiar with. So different religions will use different terms, different names, maybe slightly different concepts. That's all okay, because from the Baha'i point of view, they all are valid. So we believe very much in a creator, something that we cannot begin to understand because a creation can't understand the creator any more than a beautiful novel or magnificent painting can understand the novelist or the artist that created it. So when we start talking about God, Baha'is will use a term, the unknowable essence. that allows you to, in your heart, fill that in what makes sense to you. But God is our creator. And everything that you see, all the nature that surrounds us, is evidence of his creation. I love sitting here this morning and looking out these beautiful windows. I saw the clouds going by, I saw the trees move. And in our writings, it teaches us that the purpose of the planet, this earth that we're living on, is for our spiritual development. And that's why we respect the earth, and that's why we protect it and take care of it. So we know that we are loved by God because we are his creation. But we require education. It's not pretty when we're left to ourselves. So we need guidance. So for the Baha'i concept, the idea of a divine educator means this is someone who brings the message from God and offers it to the creation. And we know who these divine educators are. Moses, Abraham, Zoroaster, Buddha, Krishna, Christ, Muhammad, and now we believe in Baha'u'llah. You cannot be a Baha'i if you do not accept the previous manifestations of God. That's another term. We use the term manifestation rather than just simply prophet or teacher, because this individual who is unique manifests God's word. For that time, they come from age to age, and they bring a renewal of the message of God. So we don't make these great distinctions. It's just like in elementary school. You have a first grade teacher, you have a sixth grade teacher. They could easily have gone to the same college. They may easily have the same education and degree. But the message that they bring is going to be distinct for the needs of that age. So your first grade teacher is going to teach a very different form of math than your sixth grade teacher. Doesn't mean that there's a good or bad or better than. It's because of our capacity to understand. Christ said, I have much to tell you, but you cannot bear it now. So if you go look that up, that's in John 16, I think I remember. And it talks about in the future when the Spirit of truth returns. So when we look at this succession of divine manifestations, we have a name for that too. We call that progressive revelation. That God continually reveals what he would like us to understand. And it's for our benefit that we can develop a spiritual civilization. So people will say, but you know, all the religions, they kind of teach the same thing. And other people go, no, they don't. They teach very different things. So how do we put that together? What does that look like? So Baha'u'llah says that when you look at the great scriptures, you're going to find two different types of lessons or truths or laws. One are the spiritual truths. These are universal spiritual truths. They do not change. And that's why when people say we see similarities from faith to faith, that's what we're talking about. What are those universal truths? Well, I got this cute little card here, and this has the golden rule. And it has the golden rule in 6 different religions, worded a little bit differently, but it's a universal truth. And if you like this, I have a few extras with me. And things like the 10 Commandments. You're going to find those basic concepts in every one of the world's great scriptures. What changes? What's different? Well, guidance for 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, may not be what we need today. So what are some of the we call these social principles? See, we have, this is our vocabulary. I keep coming back to what our vocabulary is. So what are our social principles? Things that we are ready for now that we were not ready for 3,000 years ago. The equality of men and women. The essential harmony of science and religion. That each individual is responsible to seek truth for themselves. That all children deserve a compulsory universal education. There's several others. These don't sound unusual to us for this time where we live, but you can go places in the world that those are radical ideas even now. Keep in mind that our calendar began in 1844. So to find all of these principles in one place is revolutionary. So, how do we know God? If we cannot directly interact with God because He's so much greater than even our minds can comprehend. We know Him through His Word, but we also know Him through the physical world. What does that mean? So when I talk to kids, I say, we use the terms kingdom and world as levels of spiritual development, all right? So I tell the kids, all right, we've got different kingdoms that we can be aware of. We've got the mineral kingdom, we've got the plant kingdom, we've got the animal kingdom, and when we have the top level is mankind. Mineral kingdom, we see the power of attraction. Gravity, magnetism. You have two drops of water, they get close enough to each other, and they connect. The power in the plant kingdom is the power of growth. We recognize these things, but we can't exactly explain them. In the animal kingdom, we see the power of movement. Now, animals are still restricted by their instinct. They may be able to respond in certain ways, but they still have their instinct that keeps them limited. You know, a rooster's not going to say, you know, last night I crowed an awful lot. I think I'm going to sleep in the morning. That doesn't happen. So these powers, this energy that we see, this is the divine energy. This is God's love that manifests itself at these different kingdoms in the physical world. What's different about us, the human? We have something called a rational soul. Rational soul only exists at our level. That rational soul is a direct gift from our Creator. We have our animal nature, and we have our spiritual nature. That's our dual nature. And the friction between our animal self and our spiritual self, that friction is what propels us to spiritual growth. Looking at my notes again. So we have this dual nature. We have free will. We can contemplate our Creator. These are the special gifts that we have. So we talk about being created in God's image. That's what we're talking about. So individually, what is our own personal journey? What is our spiritual journey? We know we're born. We know that our body dies and that there's something else that is happening if we think about it. And we can ignore it. We can pretend it doesn't exist. That's our free will. But Baha'u'llah says that the world beyond, and there's that word world, the world beyond is different from this world. As this world is different from that of the child while still in the womb of its mother. So my kids were somewhere in elementary school, and one day it dawned on them that people die. I don't remember what happened. And they came to me and it was like, we don't want to die. I don't know what that is. That's awful. So how do you explain to a child? Well, I took this quotation. I said, okay, we're going to go get up and lease this bed. And I threw the quilt over us and I go, we're triplets. And we haven't been born yet. Let's analyze this. It's dark and it's cozy and it's warm. I'm never hungry. And I like this. I don't want this to change. This is great. I like it just like this. But nothing stays the same. The space is getting smaller. Of course, we couldn't be changing, getting bigger. The space is getting smaller, right? And I don't even know why we're bothering with this. And what are these? And what's that? What's that for? And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, what would happen if one of us disappeared? That would be terrifying. Why would there be such cruelty? What's the purpose of that? And where did they go? There's just two of us now. How awful. So I threw the quilt off and I said, all right, let's analyze this. It's cold and it's bright. But I can use my fingers and I can feel that quilt is kind of soft. And I can hear music from the other room. I can smell dinner and I didn't even know I was hungry. But you know what? I bet this is good for something. Keep in mind I'm a dental hygienist now, right? Okay. Bet there's some function here. I said, imagine if we could say to that baby before it was born, let me tell you what you're in for. Things you cannot begin to appreciate. You're going to be able to use all these physical things that you were developing in a new way. Just as now we're preparing spiritually for things we can't imagine in a new way. But I said, let me tell you, if you could tell a baby about the mouth, wouldn't it be remarkable? They couldn't begin to understand. Let me tell you about your mouth. You're going to be able to communicate. You're going to be able to speak words. You can have different languages. You can sing. Different kinds of music. All pretty neat. Let me tell you about food. Food's great. All different kinds of food. But here's one of the best things about your mouth. You're going to be able to take this mouth, and you're going to be able to curl up the sides of it, and you're going to be able to look at somebody across the room. And you're going to be able to smile. And you know what happens? They smile back. And for that little instant, you've connected with somebody. It may be in the grocery store. It may be, you might be driving and you look over and there's somebody and they're singing on the radio and you think that's nice and they smile at you and you smile back. We have this capacity to connect. So when I say a prayer that states our purpose, a lot of people wonder, what is our purpose? So for Baha'is, our purpose is to know God and to worship Him. We've already talked about how we know God. We know God, excuse me, we know God through His Word. We know God through the physical world, and we look for those. Baha'u'llah says, every created thing is a door to my knowledge, meaning God's knowledge. There's a reason why trees are a universal symbol for unity across thousands of years in all religions and in all cultures because of the symbolism of the tree. So if our purpose is to know God and to worship Him, we understand how we can know God. What does it mean to worship? The language is extended. The word worship is now encompassing something a little different. Worship, when we think of it in the traditional sense, prayer, meditation, getting together, and sharing that experience with others. But for Baha'is, it's extended to action. And that our actions, if performed with the attitude that we are being of service, and we're doing it to the best of our capacity, has the same value as active worship. So imagine, if you go to your job, and you're not just taking a paycheck home, but you're actually trying to do your job to the best of your ability with the intent of being in service, so being of service, it has that value. It doesn't matter if it's volunteer work or if you are being of service in your community in some capacity. You're caring for your family. If you do it with intent, it has that great value for your own spiritual development. So I'm thanking you for your attention. I'm going to finish with a prayer. And this is a prayer for unity. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.